Hey, what's up everyone? My name is Jeff, and today we're going to be diving into a bunch of historic decks here that are prepped for Strixhaven's release. And we got Mystical Archive cards on MTG Arena. All but these ones are available. These are the ones that got banned. Swords of Plowshares, Natural Order, Lightning Bolt, Demonic Tutor, Dark Ritual, Counterspell Channel. If you know those are the ones that got banned, you know there's some pretty busted cards in this set as well. We have some really exciting ones, some that are just reprints like Approach of the Second Sun, but we also got like Day of Judgment, which is basically another version of Wrath of God, exact same card except doesn't regenerate, but we have more board wipes, and just like a bunch of really awesome cards. And so you can go through all of these ones, but I'm going to be diving into a few different decks here. I have 5 decks ready for you guys that are ready to see play and excited to be diving into this one. So let's dive right into it. So first one we have is the 9 Lives Protection deck. So the main thing is that we got a where is it at? We got Teferi's Protection in the format, which is a sweet card. It was originally printed in a commander deck and is now available in Historic, which is super sweet. So 3 mana instant until your next turn. Your life total can't change and you gain protection from everything. All permanents you control phase out. Exile Teferi's Protection. So this card is pretty cool, but there's a lot of other cards that do better things than this in a constructed format typically. And so you want to build a deck that actually will use this ability of all of your permanents gain protection, and just it does everything you want it to do. Everything phases out. Well, the main deck that wants this kind of effect right now is the 9 Lives Solemnity deck. So if you haven't seen this before, 9 lives, you get up to 9 lives, then it sacrifices itself. As soon as 9 lives is gone, the game is over. Well, you also get Solemnity out that says players can't gain counters. Counters can't be put on enchantments, creatures, artifacts, or lands, and that means that 9 lives can't get any counters onto it, which means every time that people attack in, it prevents all the damage dealt to you. No counters get put on 9 lives, and it's a hard lock unless they can remove the Solemnity or the 9 lives, which 9 lives has hexproof, so pretty difficult to actually deal with. Typically they have to find a way to get rid of Solemnity and then hit in a bunch of times, or they find an Ugin. And the Ugin is the biggest downside of this deck, is that Ugin just destroys it, because it goes, bring out Ugin, -3, and everything gets blown up to Solemnity, 9 lives, and the other win con here, which is getting into Trials, which says you can't lose the game. So even if 9 lives dies, getting Trials, would still be out there, because there are a few other ways that people can find ways to get rid of it. Well, if we can for Teferi's Protection at the same time that someone is doing the negative on Ugin, then we can protect all our stuff. Nothing dies. Ugin actually can't get any more counters onto itself after. It doesn't stop counters from going onto Planeswalkers. That's right. But then we have getting into the Trials that can come in afterwards and then hit in for 4 damage to kill the Ugin afterwards. And so that's kind of the main game plan. We have Approach of the Second Sun, which does have the cool art. So I'm hoping that we can get the cool art for that one as well. But Approach of the Second Sun will then get our other win con besides just locking people out and making them hate us. We also got Mana Tithe into the format as well, which is super exciting. So 1 mana, instant counter target spell unless its controller pays 1. Yes, a counter spell in white. And this isn't typically that good of a card. In general, it's not the way you want to be going with this. But at the same time, this deck does need some early game interaction, some ways to just stop the things that are really busted. And so between Authority of the Consoles, Rest in Peace to kind of deal with some decks, and then Mana Tithe, we can actually get people pretty often, because people just aren't expecting counter spells in a deck like this. And so they don't play around like they play around Censor or whatever. Does that mean you can get them all the time? No, but is it fun to get them? Oh yes, it is. And so I'm not sure that this should be a full play set, but it is in this deck right now because I'm building it for fun. You're welcome. By the way, all the deck lists are down in the description below. You want to check these out. I'll also put up links to kind of go to the different places so you can see different information on all this. Let's dive into the next one. The rest of this deck has already kind of been seen. I'll go over it real quick because I just realized I didn't do it. Idyllic Tutor to go tutor up all of our Solemnities and 9 lives. Settle the Wreckage and Day of Judgment. I have this instead of Wrath of God because it is the new card that came in. Wrath of God is technically better, so probably play that one. You could play Day of Judgments and Wrath of Gods, but I do think that there are occasional times that Settle the Wreckage is better because you can stop all people attacking in, and it hurts people even more sometimes. If you can't quite get to the Solemnity 9 lives on the same turn, then just hold up a Settle Wreckage and win the game instead. All right, sweet stuff. Next up, we have Sultai Storm, and this deck is super exciting. So we got a bunch of Storm cards. So the way that Storm reads is, let's go into Tendrils of Agony, because this is our main win con with this deck. So 4 mana sorcery, target player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. And then it has Storm. Whenever you cast this spell, copy it for each spell cast before this turn. You may choose new targets for the copy. So if you had cast 10 other spells before this and then cast Tendrils of Agonies, you get itself, which is 1 copy, and then 10 other copies. So then you'll have 11 altogether copies of the card on the stack, which then 11 will do 22 damage to their face and you gain 2 life. So how can we get to a point where we can be casting 10 spells before we cast Tendrils of Agony? It's a 4 mana card. That's really difficult to do. It's not really easy, but we have a superpower card with Bolas's Citadel. Bolas's Citadel, look at the top card of your library. At any time you can play the top card of your library and cast it as though you spend life to cast it instead of you cast it with life instead of with mana. All right, boom, bam, done, nailed it. First try. All right, so the main thing is, one of the biggest issues with Bolas's Citadel is that eventually you're going to run into lands off the top, or you're going to run out of life to be able to cast things. Well, between Weather the Storm, which can kind of storm off and gain us a ton of life, which is, if we hit one of these, that means we can cast everything else for a few more turns. we can keep going off. We gain so much life with Weather Storm, which is another storm card. It just says gain 3 life and it has Storm. So if we storm off with it, we gain a bunch of life. Fantastic stuff. And then we can also Emergent Ultimatum to go dig for cards. The main cards that we're wanting to cast, we can Weather the Storm, Tendrils of Agony, and Bolas's Citadel. We can hit with Emergent Ultimatum because they are monocolored cards, so we can cast them. Also Mind's Desire, which is pretty sweet stuff. And then we have to make sure that we can kind of manipulate the top of our deck a little bit. So between Bond of Flourishing to make sure we keep bringing stuff back into our hand. It also gains us 3 lives. So we look at the top 3 cards of the library, reveal a permanent card from them, put it into your hand. So we can't grab all of our spells, but we can grab lands. We can, grab Bolas's Citadel, which is our main things we want to have. And then we can also go for other things. And then we have Brainstorm, which can help us manipulate the top of our deck a lot better, basically. So we have the Brainstorm available to be able to draw 3 cards and then put 2 cards back on top of the library, which will let us cast those 2 spells with Bolas's Citadel, or in the early game, just make sure that we can find the Bolas's Citadel, find the things that we need to kind of get through the early game. And then that's kind of the way we're going off with it. We also do have Fabled Passages, which we can crack anytime that we need to shuffle the top of the deck. We have some cycling lands with Zagoth's Triome and everything like that. And so kind of, I'm hoping that we can go off with it. That is one of the biggest issues. I'm not 100% positive that we have enough ways to interact with the top of the deck. At the same time that we have lots of card draw with Growth Spiral, Explore, that we can just hit a bunch of ramp as well along the way and get to a point where we have enough lands that we can be casting stuff from hand, make sure that we keep drawing cards. If we're drawing hitting things off the top of the library, or at least drawing cards that will change what's on the top of the library with Bolas's Citadel, that we can kind of just keep going off and doing crazy stuff. And so that's the main game plan here. Keep casting spells until we get the Tendrils of Agony. We did get in Strixhaven Culling Ritual, which I think will help us get 2 Bolas's Citadel, or just be a decent board wipe. Destroy each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. Add black or green for each permanent destroyed this way. I'm hoping that this can be really busted at some point. I'm not sure. It sounds really fun to me, at least. This does actually destroy our Nissa as well, which is a little bit interesting, as well as all of our pests that we did. I did add in 1 Bellageous Witherbloom just because, I don't know, just for fun. We're gaining lots of life and we can untap lands and kind of keep going off with the combo with this. And so it seemed like it could be decent for us, so might as well. And then we also have Nissa, Steward of the Elements, which can manipulate the top of our deck. If we hit a land off the top, we can -0, look at the top card of the library. Here we go. I'll zoom in. If it's a land or a creature card with current mana cost less than or equal to its number of loyalty counters, doesn't matter. Lands are always 0. And so as long as we go X0, then we can, as long as we do the negative effect, we can get a land off the top and onto the battlefield. And I believe it comes in untapped as well, which is nice. So we can keep casting stuff. So that's the reason Nissa's in here. It's just a nice thing to kind of help us keep going off the combo. It also lets us scry and dig into the Bolas's Citadel, just making sure we're setting up our turns. We have enough life gain in the early game that we should be able to kind of combo off and go crazy with this. And so that's the main idea of the deck. Go off with Tendrils of Agony, Weather the Storms, all the fun stuff here, and just go crazy. And it sounds super fun. So we're definitely gonna be trying that in the future. All right, let's dive into Death Shadow deck. So this actually comes from one of the Strixhaven decks, cards that I thought was really exciting. This was actually before I started. This wasn't built with Mystical Archive cards in mind necessarily. Especially, I was going to add in Inquisition of Kozilek, but when you're playing a Death Shadow deck, Thoughtseize is better just because you want to lose life. But Bayou Groff is an interesting card here. 2 mana plant dog. It's a plant. Nice. As additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature or pay 3. And so it's a 2 mana 5/4. We do have Luris as the companion in this one, so we can kind of be able to play this from the graveyard. And it also is just, we have a few different creatures that we're fine killing in the early game to make sure that we can kind of play this out. We have Stitcher Supplier, which can help us fill a graveyard. Pelt Collector, which we're fine sacrificing to get a Groff. This is basically Golgari Death Shadow, and the Groff, the baby Groff, I'm trying to play as Tarmogoyf, basically. With the stats there, I think it can get up to the same power level, and this is the main game plan. So Stitcher Supplier or Pelt Collector on turn 1. If we have another good creature like Fiend Artisan or Glowspore Shaman on turn 2, we can play those instead of the Biogroff, mill over some stuff, and then we have Aghanim Awakenings and Call of Death Dwellers to be able to bring back stuff that we filled either with Stitcher Supplier or by sacrificing, Stitcher Supplier with Biogroff. We can go grab a few other creatures with Call the Death Dweller and kind of go off here. We also have a bunch of Aghanim Awakenings. We have Turn Timber Symbiosises and Symbiosis, these ones, and also Overgrown Tombs. Only 12 lands here, by the way, because we have so many modal lands to kind of make sure that we can deal enough damage to ourselves to make us get low enough for Death Shadow to work. Skyclave Shade here as well, just because we wanted stuff that we can sacrifice to Biogroff to kind of keep bringing back. Fiend Artisan to go dig for our Death Shadows, whatever cards we want, and just try to outvalue people basically with this deck, with the graveyard, with being able to village rights and go crazy with it. And so this is that deck. It didn't actually end up using the Mystical Archives cards, but we did use something on Strixhaven I think is pretty exciting. Yeah, on the next one. Next deck we have here. This one's probably going to be a lot faster than other. I just realized I'm going really fast through all these, but you know what? That's fine. This is one I'm actually excited to play. I may even play it without the Ephemerate here pretty soon, just to have something to play here. So Ephemerate is the new card that we got with Mystical Archive, which is sweet. 1 mana instant, exile target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. So it's just a blink effect. That's what it is. Whenever because leaves the battlefield, enters the battlefield again, and you create another ETB effect. If someone was targeting this with a Heartless Act or any kind of removal spell, you blink it, it comes back as a new creature. The target is no longer valid, and so it technically will be a different creature than the one that they were targeting. So it also saves them. Then you have Rebound. If you cast a spell from your hand, exile it as it resolves at the beginning of your next upkeep. You may cast this card from exile without paying its mana cost. So at the beginning of next upkeep, we just get to cast it again. So as long as we have a creature on the battlefield, we can blink it again and have another ETB effect. So the whole idea of this is that we want to have a bunch of ETB effects with this, which we have a ton of them. We have Cloud Razor here, which when it enters battlefield, gain 2 life, draw 2 cards. We have Thassa, Deep Dwelling, to make sure we can keep hitting more stuff. Elvish Rejuvenator, which is probably one of the key pieces of this deck to really make it work, because we want to have enough mana to be casting lots of things as well. Just the card draw that we're getting, everything that we can cast, lots of things at once to overwhelm the opponent and just swing in with value. Elvish Rejuvenator, for 3 mana, 1/1, enters the battlefield. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield. And so every time it enters the battlefield, we look 5 deep. We should be able to hit a land in 5 deep. There are occasional times it doesn't work, but like most of the time, even in just like normal decks running 24 lands or even less, you should be able to hit a land off digging 5 cards deep. So the whole idea of this is we want to be blinking this card a lot of the times in the early game, and then we get to our value cards later with Cloud Blazer. I have 2 copies of Elite Guard Mage, which is a worse version of Cloud Blazer, but better because it's cheaper. Like it just makes sure that we can actually get stuff out on turn 4. I don't want to have our best card having to wait until turn 5 before we can start playing it, but this also gives us five cards of our best effect that we can have, which is drawing us cards, gaining us life, kind of going crazy with that. We also got in the new set Elite Spellbinder, which is PVD's card. 3 mana, 3/1 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, look at target opponent's hand. You may exile a non-land card from it. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may pay it. Spell costs 2 more to cast this way. So this basically in our deck becomes the what's the statue card that everything, like, so you look at their hand and everything in this costs 2 more to cast, with a lot of ETB effects and Panharmonicons, which is also in this deck to make sure we can have the ETB hit multiple times. This just makes everything cost a bunch, and so this effect doesn't go away when Elite Spellbinder leaves the battlefield. So it just stays there. And you keep exiling a bunch of these cards. And and so, yeah, so as long as it remains exiled, it doesn't stop being exiled at any point from this leaving the battlefield. So at least Spellbinder becomes a pretty good hate card for us to just make sure everything slows down, make sure we deal with their most important cards or ways that they can answer our stuff. It doesn't deal with it completely or for forever, but it's at least a good way to play. We have Charming Prince in here as well to make sure that we can kind of keep exiling stuff more and more times. I was trying to find out a way to make sure we can kind of play something in the 1-drop slot. I wasn't having enough stuff in the 1-drop slot. We're trying out Gilded Goose just because it does have an ETB effect where we create food tokens, and gaining life is our main form of protection at the moment. We do want to keep our creatures alive so we can kind of go off with Thassa. We don't want to have to block too often. And so Gilded Goose is, I think, a pretty good blocker. It's a flyer and it can gain us some life with the food tokens, and having it ETB multiple times gives us multiple food, so it doesn't feel as bad. Like, it feels more like a Land of Worlds or like a Birds of Paradise than other times. At the same time, though, every time that it ETBs, it resets. It doesn't have haste. So you have to reset, wait a turn before you can use it again. And so I'm in between with Gilded Goose to see if it's actually good enough. Otherwise, Deputy of Detention as our main removal spell, which if it ever leaves the battlefield, they get back what they had, but this destroys tokens and it hits any permanent on the battlefield. And so we can always blink it, and with a Pine Archon, take back the thing that we had initially on turn 3. So we play Deputy Detention on turn 3, Pine Archon on turn 4, and then like Ephemerates or whatever, and all of a sudden we can get 2 things off the battlefield instead of the 1. And we just hope they don't have ETB effects as they're going through. And we also just hope they don't have a Hushbringer, because we don't have a way to answer Hushbringer. That would be really bad. And so, yeah, that's the deck. All right, on to the next one. All right, there's a lot of just fun stuff here because that's the last of it. So Mizzix Mastery is another card that comes in with this new set. I'm super excited for. So 4 mana, I like the art of the other versions of this better too. We can dive into these if we wanted to. So Mizzix Mastery here, 4 mana, sorcery, exile the target card that's an instant or sorcery card from the graveyard. For each card exiled this way, copy it, and you may cast a copy without paying its mana cost, and then exile it. You can also pay 8 to overload it, and then it says whenever you may cast a spell for its overload cost, if you do, change its text by replacing all instances of target with each. So I think there's a lot of different ways to be using this card. There's a lot of exciting ways to just like ramp up into it, play lots of burn spells and recast all the burn spells or something similar to that. And you can even play it like in the mono red Chandra or like ramp deck with Mind Stones, like trying to ramp up like crazy, play a bunch of board whites, play a bunch of whatever, have a few burn spells along the way, but have them all focused towards creatures or whatever else. And then in the late game, you can overload this and go crazy with it. That's kind of a way that you can go with it. There's a bunch of ways to play this that can be really fun. Or you can use it kind of as like a reanimation type spell for really busted spells. And so that's what we're doing at this one. We're playing Deathbellow Warcry, where 8 mana, search your library for up to 4 Minotaur creature cards with different names, put them onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. So Ironcrag Feet had kind of let us cast this for a little bit cheaper before already. This is actually in standard. There's just not enough good Minotaurs right now to make a combo out of it. You could play this with what is it? Masked, the one that turns all creatures into changelings, basically, and just go grab the 4 best creatures that are in standard at the moment and do crazy stuff with it. Unfortunately, it's still hard to kind of cast this in standard, and so we're doing it here instead, where we have a few better Minotaurs. And so the whole game plan is to go grab Sethron, Hurun General. Let's go and look at this one. Whenever it or another non-token Minotaur enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/3 red Minotaur creature token. So we're going to grab 4 Minotaurs. This is one of them. All of them enter the battlefield, and you do a lot of damage. If you have 3 extra mana, you can also gain Menace and Haste until end of turn. That's the way that we can win. You can give all Minotaurs haste and everything. We unfortunately don't have, I don't think, the way to combo off to that extent where we have the mana to be able to go off with it on the same turn, but it's possible. It could happen. Really, this is just a janky deck, though. We have Neheb Eternal at the beginning of post-combat main phase. Add red mana equal to your mana pool for each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn. So there actually is a win con here. Because we also have Fanatic of Mogus, which says when it enters the battlefield, it deals damage to each opponent equal to your devotion to red. And so you can have your devotion to red. And so I'm trying to think of how this ends up working. And so then we also have Morog. So Morog, a Fury of Akum, 6 mana. Each creature that attacks gets 1 for each time they attack. Anyway, when a land enters the battlefield, it's if it's your main phase, there's an additional combat after this phase. At the beginning of that combat, untap all creatures you control. So at the beginning of your turn, so Neheb Eternal kind of works with this. So we go off on on our first main phase. Deathbell Warcry, if we go grab everything, Fanatic of Mogus does a bunch of damage to their face. And then Neheb gains us mana for the second main phase, where we add mana to our mana pool for each 1 life that they lost. So, all our mana pips 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we deal 7 damage to their face. And then as long as we have 1 land after using Mizzix Mastery that we can hit the battlefield with or anything like that, then we get an additional main phase or combat phase, which then we'll have mana to be using with Neheb, which then we can activate Sethron's ability. And as long as we have another combat phase, then we can add the mana and go in. So this is a turn 5 combo win where we can go off with these. I put 2 of each of these different cards because I don't want to draw into them. We have to try to hit all 4 of them. I didn't want to have too many of them to not have that. And everything else in the deck is just trying to make sure that we can go through everything that we need to. So we have Faithless Looting to kind of dig for our Deathbell Warcry, put into the graveyard, find our Mizzix Mastery. We have Fire Prophecy to get through in the early game, Sweltering Suns for some good board wipe removal in the early game, Merchant of the Veil for also just filtering, and then Seize the Spoils for more filtering, and also ramp into our Deathbell Warcry. And that's the game plan, guys. Seize the Spoils also works out to let us actually use our Pirate's Pillage to use Mizzix Mastery on turn 4, and then still have a land held up to be able to go grab the Morog and go off of the combo. And so that's it, guys. There's a lot of little different cards out there that are really exciting. There's a bunch of ones. Lightning Bolt, unfortunately, one of the banned cards, but there is things like Lightning Helix, which is really exciting. Another burn deck. So there's burn decks that are out there. We also got Abundant Regrowth, Abundant Harvest, which I think is one that it's this one right here. Abundant Harvest, 1 mana sorcery, choose land or non-land, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a card of the chosen kind, either land or non-land, and put that card into your hand and the rest into the bottom of the library in random order. So this is just a good cantrip for green. It can either hit a land for you or it can hit a non-land for you. And so it's actually a better cantrip to an extent because you're getting what you want. Not necessarily the exact card that you want, but do I want action right now or do I want lands? And you can choose that. That's pretty busted. It's actually really good stuff. And so Abundant Harvest, I'm really excited for as well. I think that there's a lot of decks that just get value from these cards. Like most of the cards in this set are just good value cards that won't necessarily change a ton of things. Most of the decks I've built or showed for you are the most combo-y type things that you can go for. Crux of Fate can kind of add some combo stuff with dragons. Tainted Pack can do some pretty fun stuff. I'll leave the link to check out all the cards in this set. You can also check out the Japanese art for all these cards, which look pretty exciting. I like the art on all of these quite a bit, except for Faithless Looting, which is like, check this out. This is a card people thought was a good idea. Oh, it's fantastic. It's awful. The worst thing I've ever seen, but I love it. Anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. I'm super excited for these cards to come out. I'm super excited for Historic and Standard with Strixhaven. We're going to be playing a lot of fun decks. I hope you guys stick around for it. Make sure you like this video and also subscribe so you know when all this stuff is coming out, when I'm actually playing these decks and having fun. Let me know also in the comments below what things you're looking for. If I've not talked about different decks, put them down in the comments below. I do read through most all the comments, and they definitely give me some good ideas along the way. So I appreciate it. And yeah, thanks so much, and bye-bye.